afternoon. Welcome to this brand new shiny bootcamp for SNMP on N-Central. I'm Mark, and I'm going to be your trainer today. So, what we're going to do is do the usual welcome from our legal team. They like to remind us that as I go through stuff, we'll be talking about future plans can change, and so on, and blah, blah, blah. All right, that's done. I'm Marc-Andre. I'm the Ed Automation nerd. I'm the team lead for the nerd team. My role consists of helping partners just like you guys, working with the team to create as much content as we can to give you guys value back as part of using our different products, just being better in the industry, and whatever else we can do. So if you want to reach out to me, you see my social media at the bottom right. You feel free to reach out at any point, and I'll gladly help you however I can. A quick poll I like to do on this specific bootcamp. When I wrote this, I wanted to get an idea of how many devices do you guys actually manage on the network side. Just to the poll says how many devices, but please just do how many network devices. So it's going to say device, but please just answer for network device for me. I'm trying to get a feel for how many network devices you guys have under management today. Whether you're using Central or not is irrelevant to me. Just want to get a feel for what you guys do. So once again, if you're joining right now, just look at network devices only. So I'll give you guys another few seconds. And with that, here's the result of what you guys said. 40% are in the 0 to 50, 20% to 50 to 100, 20% 1 to 250, and 20% are over 500. I love when those numbers line up like that. Did that this morning too. Thank you for that. So we have a big happy mix of different size, not a big deal, just more for my interest than anything else. The agenda for the course is super straightforward. We'll go through a good introduction about SNMP and different things. We'll go through the different tools you can use with SNMP and what I recommend personally. We will go through using SNMP services and N-Central, using stock one, using the import function to import new ones, or using discovered versus non-discovered services when you create your own or import them. And then we'll obviously show you how to import and use and everything else. It's super easy, but it's good to take the time to cover that because a lot of people find that a little bit daunting. So the checklist for the course, super straightforward. You obviously need access to your N-Central server. Ideally, you would want to have the ability to create custom services so that you have the proper permissions, and also have the ability to access specifically a customer that has a probe, so that we can do test SNMP services with it. We're not going to break anything, but it's just good to have that access if you want to do the lab along the way. So yeah, and finally, we want to give you guys the ability to create a new device and a discovery job so that you can use those. Hold on one second. You will also need the lab manual for this course. I did make sure to attach it to the GoToWebinar. If you look at the attachments section, you will see that. I think it's called attachments. So you will see that there's going to be a very shiny PDF just like that will go through the labs and everything else we need. And then you will need a MIB browser. If you don't have it, don't panic yet. We're going to show you how to install it in just a second. With that, what we're going to do, let's talk a little bit about SNMP first. First of all, SNMP, it's a protocol called Simple Network Management Protocol, short SNMP. This is used for managing and monitoring network devices. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but SNMP also allows you to do config changes and different things. You actually can do guess and you can do sets. You can actually put information in through SNMP. 98% of the time, you will not use that, and nor do I recommend it, to be honest, but you can. Not through N-Central, but you can in theory do that. It is also built in and embedded into most commercial grade and also a lot of home grade devices that do networking. For example, my home router has it. I've been managing Cisco devices for many years. Cisco has had SNMP as far as I can physically remember it, which would be over 20 years ago. ESX, even though it's deprecated, still has it. Windows has tools to enable SNMP. There's a variety of different software that use SNMP. It's just a very, very common protocol to use. There's also 3 versions that exist. The most common one by far is V2. That's the one that we see everywhere these days. But V1 is the first version that was made. It's very basic. It's a little more slow, I find. It times out a little more easily, but it works fine in most cases. SNMP is an improved, has more error handling, and is most commonly used, as I said. V3, finally, it has the improved security and privacy. It has security encryption and a few things that makes it obviously more secure. And any scenario where you can, you should definitely be using V3. If you can't, obviously use V2. And Central does support V1 to N3. Just a couple of caveats. V3 obviously better, but also has more potential issues. What I mean by that is performance. If you manage a ton of network devices and they're all V3, there's a performance penalty to using V3 because the protocol is a lot heavier than V2. So just something to keep in mind. All right. Continuing on that line, here's some of the common terms you're going to hear when you work with SNMP, and that's important. If you've never, or if you have not used SNMP very much, I find it's an important thing to know at the beginning, because there's some weird terms, or sometimes it feels weird to me, some of the terms that they use. So it's important, if you're not familiar, to just get familiar with them. The first one is SNMP agent. If you see that in the documentation anywhere, if you see that on websites, the agent is actually the software on the actual device. On a Cisco device, it's part of the iOS. On a ESX server, it's part of the ESX software package to do it. On Linux, it's part of the OS, depending on what they are. Some of them will require an actual software to be installed, like on Windows. You would typically install something, but the agent is actually the software that's on the monitored device. Then you have your SNMP manager. The SNMP manager is going to be the software that is doing the query to the SNMP device. In our case of N-Central, it's going to be the probe. When you hear the word OID or OID, depending, it is the object identifier. It's basically a unique address or a unique numbering sequence that points to whatever data you're looking for. We're going to come back to that, don't worry. You also have MIB, or Managed Information Base. It is essentially the Rosetta Stone, or is the decoder ring for the OIDs. It basically contains a map of, here's what the OID is, here's the possible values for it, here's a description of what they do, and the name for that field. So it actually essentially translates that 136 whatever to an actual usable form. Then finally, you have traps. When you see SNMP traps, traps are sent from the agent to the manager. So it's sent the other way around. Usually SNMP is polling, so the manager will pull from the agent. The traps, the actual device will send something. It's usually based on alerts. So there's an intrusion attack, a password was changed, a device was rebooted, things like that. This will generate a trap, is usually where you would see those. All right. Having said that, the different data types in SNMP, there's a lot of them. We're not going to worry about all of it, to be honest. You're never going to see opaque. You're never going to see gauge or counters. Very, very, very rarely. If you're lucky, you'll maybe see it. Personally, what I see all the time is going to be my Boolean, my integer, my octet string, and my time tick. Those are the ones that I typically will see. But again, it's good to know that the other ones exist. I personally prefer to include that just so you guys are aware. So yeah, that's generally speaking what those are. Having said all of that, why would you care about this course? Why would you care about SNMP? A lot of people don't like it for pick a reason, really. There's a lot of reasons to not like SNMP, but realistically, why should you care as a tech or as an owner? SNMP is something that you can use to pull devices that don't support anything else. On network devices, on ILOs, iDRACs, like that, often will only get SNMP as an option to pull the information out of them. Some of them will have APIs, some of them won't, but SNMP is there across everything most of the time. It works well, it's somewhat easy to use, it is very universal, and most vendors will post their MIB files publicly. One caveat is that some vendors, like Cisco, for example, put them behind a login wall, so you need to be a Cisco partner and have a login or a Cisco certification ID and things like that to get to those things. But other than that, typically it's fairly accessible. There's also an absolute ton of resources available online. So that is also something to keep in mind. All right, next step. How does SNMP actually work? So for what we're going to focus on today, we're going to focus on gets or get and traps. So if you look at traps, traps work very simply. The manager, so the querying device or the probe, or my laptop in this instance today, is going to do a SNMP packet. The SNMP packet will contain the version of SNMP, the community ID, and the data about the request. Here's the OID. Here's what I'm looking for, right? Is it a get next? Is it a get bulk or whatever? Based on that, the receiving agent will receive that data. And if everything balances out, right? Is the community correct? Is the version correct? Is the OID you're requesting, is everything correct? It will reply with whatever you're asking for. Now, depending on what kind of query you asked, whether you do a get or a get next or a get bulk or a walk or whatever, the agent may return more or fewer packets back, but it will send back data points based on what you asked for. This sounds very convoluted, but the only thing you need to worry about really is just using the tool to get the information you need and then using your probe to do the queries for you. But I just find it important to at least know a little bit about how your technology works. On the trap side, you will find that they are incident driven, like I said earlier, so they will find an incident that warrants a trap. Sometimes it's configurable, but not always. The agent itself, so the actual Cisco device or whatever you're playing with, will generate a call to the IP address that you configured to send an SNMP packet. The packet will contain the IP address, the OID, the data point, and whatever else you're sending. So this is something that you find in the enable probe, and it will show you what they contain. Now the manager will be receiving that trap, so it has to have a receiver or a listening device, which our probe has, and it will then process it according to the rules that you set. So basically, you create services to do that. We'll come back to that. Don't worry about it. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to assume that we're still good. But if you have any issues, any questions, any audio, video, whatever, just let me know. So let's take a quick look at MIB browser. I'll do a little overview, and I'll show you how you can play with MIB files pretty easily. So if I go into my browser, where's my browser? There it is. First thing I would like to do is go MIB browser. Now the one that I'm going to recommend is iReasoning MIB browser. There's a lot of different ones that exist. That's personally my favorite. You're going to go here, download. I take the free version in my case, or if you want to get the paid one, just take the trial version. You can use those too. Blah, 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 sure, whatever. And then download the setup file, run, next. That is all in your lab manual. I'm not overly worried, but that is just something to keep in mind. Once you've done all of that, what we're going to do is you're going to open up MIB browser, and it will look just like this. Now, this is the point where you're going to stop for that part of the lab. The next thing, we're going to create test device and everything, but we'll come back to that. When you're into this tool, a few things to note. On the left side here, you see your MIB tree. So I see that, this is the actual translation points, right? So if I go here and I see my information and I do walk, once again, you choose your operation, I'll do a walk. It will load everything. I'll stop that. There we go. And what it does is that it says, okay, here's my description, my object ID, and so on and so on and so on. And then a bunch of OIDs that it doesn't know what they are, and then a few more that it knows, and then some of them it doesn't, and then so on. The reason that those are different, like this versus this, is that these have a translation item here. So if I click on this MIB file is telling me that this 136.121.111, which is, click on this 136.121.111. That is my OID. The last digit after the MIB translation, or even here, the last digit, is always the index. In some cases, this is confusing because this is the OID, which is this long thing. And then the index is 168.163.129, blah, blah, blah. So this is a little weird, but this is how some of the index works. You want to be careful with that. As far as the Incentral is concerned, it will discover both, it will work with both, no problem, but it's just something worth noting. Now, these are going to be preloaded MIBs. If you want to remove some of them, you go to MIB module or unload MIBs, and you can just say you can remove any of those that you want. I'm not gonna because I don't want to, but I can. I can load MIBs right here because I'm using the free version that is limited to 5 or 10, I can't remember. But this would be an option. Now, if your MIB tree is completely empty, that likely means that there was no preloaded module. If that is the case, you can Google them. The default modules that I have preloaded are these. They're very, very common. They actually should likely be into the MIB browser folder under MIBs. There's our default MIBs. They should be completely accessible anyways. So Next here, there we go. So that's generally that. Like I said, we're going to come back to the UI. We're going to do a few queries later, but for the time being, I just want to at least get the basics done. The next thing that I'm going to recommend is that you create a test device. To do so, it's pretty easy. You go to a customer of your choice, you do add, you do more, and you do add again. Now, don't worry, you're going to have a lab manual. It's going to tell you what to do. Don't try to do it at the same time. Everybody does, and everybody has issues. Then they come back and they say, I wasn't able to follow. You can't do both. It's not going to work. So what you're going to do is I'm going to say here, lab device for SNMP cores. Doesn't matter, whatever I want to call it. Then I'm going to say this is going to be a switch or router or a network device. Again, it's a Linux box. I don't care. The IP address for my box today is, I don't remember. This. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Just give me a sec here, like this. And then it's going to be V2, and it's going to be Mark Bootcamp. All right, I put that in the chat. So this is going to be my IP address. I need to put that into professional mode if you want to use SNMP. And I'm going to save that. Once I save it, I go to settings. I'm going to go to monitoring. I could have done that earlier, but I'm going to do it now. Settings, monitoring, SNMP. I'm going to change that to V2 and Mark Bootcamp for the community and save. Now my device is ready. Now the idea of this, you can see it's not discovered. There's no information about anything really anywhere. The asset is all blank. That's fine. It's just a test device. But what I also recommend is if you're at a customer level, come here, do a discovery. And then you're going to put in the IP address dash itself, so like this. How about that? And the next thing here is going to be under auto import. You're going to see auto import whatever. It's only one IP, so it doesn't really matter very much. So I'm going to put everything, but I'm going to say don't install the agent. Don't try to install the agent on my machine. You don't have the credentials, so it's not going to work. The next thing is under SNMP. You see the default is going to be there. You may have a few more depending on your setup. I'm going to add a V2, and I'm going to call it Mark, and I'm going to be Mark Bootcamp. This is a V2, which is perfect, and okay. Now, if you're having any issues, what I might do is I might just do another one, V1, and then Mark V1, Mark Bootcamp, because why not? So I put a V2 and a V1 just in case. I need to check that box here and say finish. This is going to run on my network. It's going to just run. In my case, it's already there, so it's not going to discover it a second time. But I just wanted to show you guys the process. You should see that device show up under yours. Now, big caveat, this is going to consume a license. This is not a huge deal. When you're done with the course, delete it. It will stay locked for, I believe it's 2 weeks. That is the license retention, unless that changed. That's what it was last I checked. So that is just something to keep in mind. If you're going to add those 2 test devices, you're going to consume 2 licenses for a few days. Once you're done, that is essentially lab 1. We are not going to talk about using stock services or pre-built services that are already in N-Central. So using stock services, it's pretty straightforward. If you go into N-Central and I go into a device, you have the ability to add a service. So you have to pick your probe. Like in this case, this is my probe. This is an ESX host, I guess. And I'm seeing all of these services that are available. Some of them like paper supply on printers, physical drives, a lot of those are all SNMP. Some of the newer ones you're going to start seeing, the Meraki services, they are actually automation policies that run on a probe and that will return that data back. So we start to see that more and more. So you're going to see that more and more. But for the time being, we're going to focus on SNMP. Let's not muddle the water more. If you say like, oh, I want to monitor this Let's Smart paper jam thing, it's obviously not going to work because I don't have that on my, it's not going to work for that device. But it's just to show you, you add the service. What it's going to do is going to pull itself. It takes anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes at most. If you're not patient, just like me, you just click scan now. This is going to take about 30, 40 seconds. This is going to come back and this will likely turn blue because they'll say like, no, it doesn't work, which makes sense. It shouldn't. So I'm going to delete that because who cares? And that is the idea. That's how you add a stock service. Now, if it is a service that is discovered, what is going to happen is that you can actually add multiple instances. Is that printer, monitor? Yeah. So that one, for example, it auto discovered that toner level for my drum. This is my personal home printer. You can see here it discovered a toner cartridge and a drum. This is a black and white laser printer. So you're now seeing that information right here as far as that. Now this dropdown comes because the service is discovered. You can manually generate those for your devices. We're going to go through that towards the end of the course, so don't lose patience. We're going to get to that. But that is something you can do. So that is something that's important to note. Otherwise, if it is just like this, an overall status, it's an other because I need to put more. I could need to put a new toner, which is fine. But it's just a status code being returned, whatever. So this is how you deal with stock services. You simply apply them. You can apply them through a template. You can auto discover them. Super easy. That's all there is to that. We're not going to cover it any longer than we need to, because really what we're here for is more how do we play with custom services, right? The first section we're going to do is use an existing service. So it says here importing. And what I want to do with that is in your lab manual, you will find a link to the lab 2. When you open it, it will open up like this. You can't use that because this is useless by itself. If you try to copy paste and save it to a text file, it's going to break because XML is super picky about formatting. So what you want to do, and that is important, you're going to right click and save as. Most browsers will do that no problem. When you save as, it will save a copy like this. Then you get time to press the sneeze button. So what we're going to do now that I've saved that, I now have in my downloads folder an XML file that realistically is the same damn thing. But it's an XML that is saved that is now usable. So the way to use it is super easy. You go ideally at the SO level. Since you're testing on the lab, you may want to do it at the customer level, but 99.5% of the time, and I would say 0.5 just for principle, but it's really 100% of the time, you want to upload all your custom services at the SO level, never at the customer level. So what that means is that I should, yeah, it is. SNMP lab 2 right there. We're going to delete this because I did it this morning. I'm going to import a custom service. So if I went too quickly, you're at the SO, you go admin, service, custom. Again, this is going to be in your lab manual, right? Thank you, Nick. So we're going to do browse. I'm going to go to my thingy and say upload, import. The system, if the format matches, it will just import it. Note that you must be on the same version of N-Central or above. So if you download from the cookbook, it always tells you which version is minimally supported. If you get it from a colleague or a partner, another partner, you want to make sure that they use the same version of N-Central as you, or more old, I guess. You need to be on the same or more recent than them. So right now, I'm on 2021.1.7. I don't remember what I created this XML on, but it should work as long as you're not on a too old version. When you import it, it shows here. If you click on the service, you can see here I have a query. We'll come back to how this works in a second. You can see I'm looking at memory size, the processes, date, and an uptime value of some kind. Under data here, I was saying this is the memory size, this is a number of this is a system date, and so on. All of these data points are coming in, and I'm able to then monitor them. So if I go to the all devices view, I would pick my test device that we created or that I imported, either or. Monitoring, I go add. Then I go to my probe and I look for lab 2. Yeah, there it is. Lab 2, 1, right here, and apply. Now we're doing testing right now. So we're doing everything through just manual, just click add and add it and so on. In real life, when you do this in production, you're going to want to make templates. You're going to want to use the templates in bulk and so on and so on. But again, we're testing right now, so let's not panic and just use that. But just something to keep in mind. All right, now that we've done that, okay, the next thing, am I forgetting something? Always check because I speak for a while and then I want to make sure I don't forget. Nope, I think we're good. The next important part now is how do we make our own SNMP based services. The simple thing, we'll just make one and we'll get you guys to do one and then we'll just move to a quick little break. So the section for this is pretty easy. We're going to go into my browser because that's where you would usually start that. So there it is. Sorry, like 18 things open because I'm showing my screen. The first thing again, once just to forget, not to forget, when you're here, make sure you click all the way to the top of the org before you do a walk. So in my case, I'm going to use a little clean button right here on the right. I'm going to choose it because if you choose this and I say walk, you'll see it's missing some of the other stuff because it starts at this OID beyond. It doesn't start at the beginning. It's just silly. But you see here, when I do walk, it walks from this. So if I have a, I don't know, like I go to this here, last one here, and I do walk, see it's finding nothing because the walk is always a walk as of this. It's a weird way to do it, but it's how the SNMP protocol works, that the walk is basically a get next in bulk until it's done. So it starts from this and moves on. Make sure you're at the top. Then I'm going to do walk. And that's everything that I'm looking for. I'm going to stop because that's enough. You can see some of them are translated with the MIB, some of them are not. It's fine. I have my description here, which is my Linux, SNMP, Azure, blah, 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 blah. This is my uptime, which is 500 hours because I did not reboot it in, I guess, 2 weeks, about 20 days. That's about right. 20 some days. The contact is me. The name is my Linux SNMP device, and the location is on the dock. I don't know why. So basically, this just shows you these data points. Now I'm going to pick a few of them for my custom service. So what I want to do is start with a location. When I click on this, you'll notice that at the top here, it populates it, right? See, it changes it. So it populates it. The last digit is always the index. Don't forget that. So 136.121.16 is my location. If I double click here, it goes to that value in the MIB, and it says here 136.121.16, and then it shows that it's a display string, so it's a string, and that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to right click and say, wait, good, not that one. Right click here and say copy. If I go to Uncentral, the next thing is I'm going to go to Administration, Service, Custom. Once again, I recommend being a DSO when you do that in production. Then I do Add Service SNMP. Now there's a lot of different types, right? You could do a log file, you could do EDF, which we're not going to go there today. Automation-based monitoring, which also works for network devices now. TCP port monitoring and syslog, which we'll touch towards the end, or SNMP. SNMP it is. Now I'm going to call this 2021 11:30 lab 2 and then PM because that is the afternoon session. Then I need to add a query. I'm going to call this query 1 because that doesn't matter. I just only have one query. In my case, I already know I want to do this for a second one. So I'm going to do add, and now I have 2 OIDs. Now it's complaining that they're the duplicates. It's fine for now. We're going to fix that. But I always recommend putting the number you need right away and then just renaming and cleaning them up. So the first one will be description, location. And I'm going to copy paste the OID. Now you want to remove, there's always, when you paste from that software, there's always a dot and a space. I don't need that. You want to match that format. The next one is going to be my service count, whatever. Now this one I'm going to type because I know what it is, 136.121.17. So I can see they're in sequence. I know because they're the next one in line, because if I click here, service is a 7, location is 6, easy, right? Now, one is a string. It's going to be important later. One of them is an integer. We have to deal with that separately. So now that I created this, I have all these options. Leave all of this alone to custom. We're not going to come back to that yet. If you wanted to change the index on this manually, you can say yes, please, and rename it. In our case, we don't need it, so we're going to say no, thank you, and save. All right, now our query is the identifier. That's fine, and then I can put the index, so it will show a 0 beside the service name. It's not necessary, but I prefer to do that personally. It's just a visual thing. We'll see it later. Then under data is where you have to do your metrics and your thresholds. That's where the SNMP service starts to make sense. All of these are getting a bunch of data points, right? It looks like a table, and you're like, oh, this OID is 5, this OID is LO, this OID is X, whatever. This here is where you decide what to do. So the first one will be device location. I need to pick that it's a string, right? Because that's a string, it's important. Yeah, and save. You'll notice that the string, you cannot threshold on it right now. There's just no way, it's just the way it works. I know a lot of people want to threshold on it, and I've been asking for it, but as of right now, you cannot. The next one is going to be our service count. We know it's an integer, so I would pick an integer now. You want to pick the one that makes sense. Now, in the SNMP software, it only says integer. Sometimes if you look, it will show a counter or an integer, like this one is 1. Some of them will say, where is it? Some of them will have different value, but 99% of the time it'll just be integer. The thing is that you want to be careful. If you notice this is services will never go over like 100 or 500, you're welcome to use an 8 or 16-bit. Personally, I would not go below 16-bit. I would always use 16 or 32. And the reason you want to pick something like that and not always 64 is that it consumes more database space and it consumes more resources to process and work with, right? Also, the thresholds will be much bigger, which you don't necessarily always want. So yeah, so that is the idea here. Now that we've done that, you want to put a certain name, so service count. Now, this is the default way to do it. I could also say, you know what, I want to do this times 5 or plus 8 because I know there's something hidden, or minus 5 or divided by 5 or whatever, right? Or I could even do it where I could say divided by this times 2. You can use multiple variables from these in here and do various calculations. Now, this calculation makes no sense, but this is just what you would want to do. Just something to keep in mind. And then if there's a unit that makes sense, you can pick the unit. This is just to make it easier on yourself because it will show you what they are. In my case, it's a service count, so there's nothing really that will make sense. I'll just leave it to none. It's fine for me. And then the last thing is my threshold for this one. Because it's a number, I can configure it. I'm going to say 0 to 100 is normal, 100 to 125 is warning, 125 to whatever that number is bad, and save. You're welcome to customize that however you see fit. Now, one more, I saw your question, Darren, I'll come right back to that. The next thing I want to touch on while we're creating a service is if I do add a metric and I say service count 2, I know, service count 2, just like that. One thing that you have the option to do when you pick a numeric value is to use mapping. Mapping is very useful when you look at, for example, here, hold on, let's take an example where that makes sense. Like this here, administrative status, 1 is up, 2 is down, 3 is in testing. So maybe if 1 and 3 are okay, 2 would be a warning, or maybe 1 is okay, like different mapping you could have. Maybe there's be 5 of them, maybe there's 10, or like this, 1 and 2. There's different ones that would have a little more. There you go, that's better. So that one has 4 possible values, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But maybe the root type being other and direct is good, invalid is bad, and indirect would be warning, let's say. So I say 1 and 3 is good, 2 is warning, 4 is failed, let's say, or whatever else. You choose use mapping. And by doing a mapping, I can then come here, is I can say 1, 3 is normal, then warning would be 4, and then failed would be 2. So now I can map very specific values to these things and use them. This is not in your lab, this is not part of the lab, but I want to show this because this is super important. If you want to do these more complex services and there's numbers like that, you want to do that. Finally, there's a question around time tick. So if you'll notice here, this is a time tick. Where's my time tick? There it is. This guy. The actual value is 190,137,000, whatever. That's a time tick. That is a 100th of a second unit. So if you want to take this guy as an uptime, what you would do is you would pick the type, instead of integer, you would put in probably a 64-bit. And then here, you're going to put in a time tick. That's all. The system will try to convert that for you, and then you can use it. So I'm going to remove that, but that doesn't make sense, and save. So now that I've done this, I've made a service. Once again, I'm following very closely your lab manual. So you're going to see that in just a second. All you're going to do is add it to a device. So once you've done that, come here and click add, and that's it. And that's really all there is. The lab manual, after step 8, will kind of stop. There was an issue in the copy when they did the verification. But you saw me do it. The only thing you're missing is just to finish the query, add your thresholds, and save. So that should be pretty easy. But what we're going to do next is do this. What we're going to do is move on into auto-discovering SNMP services. To do auto-discover a brand new service, there's a few things you need to do. One, the table should discover, so basically the list, I guess, must have a valid index column. Without it, it's not going to work. You need to configure the custom service for auto discovery. I'll show you that. You also need to rediscover the device. That sounds annoying, but that's just the way it works. Once you've discovered it, or once you create a service, any future discovery will include that service, but any days was discovered before wouldn't know for obvious reasons. Finally, you need to apply the service through a template so that it auto applies whatever instances there are. Now, if we take a look at how that works in real life, let's go into, there we go. Let's go into here. And what I'm going to do is from the SO level, go into custom services again, add service SNMP like before. And what I want to do is I want to use the interface table. Now, this is something that you're going to add likely into your default, but this is still a very good item to use as a demo. So that's what we're going to use. Okay. What I'm going to do is right here. This is my interface table. What you can do from here is a table view. And this shows you a table with all of the different data points of said table. The index is what I was saying earlier, we absolutely need. You need to have a valid index ID like that. Then you have your different fields. For us, we're going to focus on basically these four like that. If you look at your lab manual, that's basically what I'm showing you guys, is that's what we're going to see. So now that I know I want to get these four things, you can use the index here to say, okay, what does it look like? This is the OID, this is this one, and this one. So I already conveniently put that into your lab manual. So all I got to do now is going to go and see here and say 21, 11, 30, lab 4 PM. Okay. So what I'm going to do is add a query. We're going to call it query 1. We only have the one again, so I don't care. I already know I want to have 3 OIDs. You might be thinking I have 4, but no, the fourth one will be here. So I need 3. You cannot, whatever you use here, your index, you're essentially sacrificing it. You cannot use it here as well, otherwise you'll get an error. It doesn't let you have the same OID twice in the same table. It's not going to work. So what we're going to do is first one here, we're going to rename it for interface description. The next one will be interface type. And finally, interface MTU. Oh, well, typo, but same idea. Now you'll notice that it relocates them because it's alphabetical. The system is nice enough to do that unless you sort by a different one. So make sure that you don't confuse them when you put the OIDs. Now the description right here, it is OID 136.121212. The last digit is the index, so we'll leave it alone. The type is going to be 1212213. That. And finally, the MTU is going to be .4. So .1212214, like that. These are my 3 OIDs, and the last digit will be my index. Where do I get the index? From this guy. So now I have to tell him the index will come from 136.12122211. And oh wait, I pressed enter accidentally. We'll come back. So what I'm telling the system is say, go look for this value, and the default will be 0. It doesn't matter. It's just what shows by default. Allow me to change it, and this is my interface index value. Or this is just whatever you want to call it. And if you want to put a little help field to make them understand what it is, you can do that here. By doing that, this is now allowing me to query that OID to fill in these indexes. So again, the important thing, for that OID cannot be used here as well. It's not going to work. Second, this OID must contain the valid indexes, .1, .2, whatever that you need to populate. Once you do that, you come here, you say pick my identifier, and you'll see here this just become ungrayed out. I can check this. Now that I can check this, the system now knows to look for this into discovery jobs and say discover this and populate these. So that's what the system is doing by checking this here. The next thing is, let's actually make the service. So super easy. We're going to come here and say add a metric, and then interface description. This is going to be a string. Once again, string don't have thresholds, right? No big deal. Next thing is interface type. There's a typo, but who cares? And the type is an integer, I think. So integer. No big deal. And finally, interface MTU. This one will be my MTU setting. This is also an integer, but it's a little bit bigger, so we'll take 32-bit. and OK. Now that I've done these 3 fields, I can threshold them, but the default thresholds for right now are fine. I'm not going to worry too much. But I have 3 data points that will be pre-populated with the index from this. So save. Service is now ready. Now that I've done this, the only thing left is to go to my customers. So we're going to go to my Marky Mark's Flying Circus. We're going to go to my discovery jobs because I'm lazy. We're going to use the existing one. And there's one that we did this morning. Actually, there's one we just did. We'll use that one. This guy. As long as you change literally anything, the green button becomes available. So I just put a description. I put 1. And it brings it back. I do OK. When I do that, it will now rerun. It will take 5 to 15 minutes. Not a big deal. But this is going to rediscover it. Once it does, what it's going to allow me to do is if I go to apply these services, so I've done it this morning. You can see here, this is my custom monitoring. Wait, this guy here. That is the one I did this morning. You can see now it discovered 1 and 2. So if I make a template and I apply this now and I see auto apply instances, it will auto apply both of those. And it will say my description is loop back. My interface type is 24 and my MTU is 65,000 something. Makes sense. So now this is what it looks when it's done and it's working. This is basically just allowing me to do that. And like I said, if I make it through a template, it would simply apply it with all of the different data points. So that's simple, but that's super important. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about SNMP traps. Now, if you don't know what traps are, that's okay. What we are going to do is take a few seconds to explain that because this is a little murky for some people. If you'll remember, I explained at the beginning of the course that traps, SNMP traps anyways, are basically an alert that is sent from the actual device or agent to the manager or the probe. So what happens is that the alert comes in and says like, oh, somebody tried to log in or somebody rebooted the device or did a change or whatever. Pick a reason. An alert is triggered. It is sent to the probe. It goes into a log file. It is the same process that we use for SNMP traps and for syslog. That's why for us it's the same service, but they're separate, obviously. So the alert comes in. The alert comes in and says, okay, here is what's happened. There's this alert for this device and so on. The system will go in and check, is there a device that matches that IP? If yes, does it have a service to monitor it? If yes, does it match the value? So to create one is super easy. We're going to go into the central side at the SO level. Once again, services, custom service. And the way that we're going to create this, we're going to make a syslog service. And I know it's syslog/SNMP traps. It doesn't say that, but it is. Just trust me on this one. So we're going to add syslog, and I'm going to call this here 22/1/11/30 lab 5 p.m. And what I'm going to do is you add rules. The rules are going to be basically expressions that you choose to configure to say, okay, well, the rule name will be, I don't know, any error, whatever. And then I say, if you find that string, that's bad. If you don't find it, that's good. You could literally just say error. And if it sees that word written exactly as is, it is case sensitive, it will work. Personally, I prefer to use something like regexr or regexpal or whatever. There's different ones. And you find a text. So SNMP trap sample. So if I look into here, we look at the different traps. This is a trap example of what's going to happen. This is a trap that will be happening here. It says cold start. So if I take this text, put that here, all I got to do is make my expression to look for, let's say I want to look for cold start. So cold or cold start, like that. It's looking for it, but you see here, it's kind of freaking out because there's space. So we're going to do that. Hold on. This is not working because there's a space. So what we're going to change is we'll change the event type to restarted. Yeah, that's better. So see, it's highlighting that blue for restarted. I'm going to put that into squares. But what I want to do now is I want to say, oh, sorry, I know what I'm doing wrong. That's my bad. What we're going to do is come here and we're going to say cold start like that. And it's finding it. But if I don't know the uppercase, lowercase, or sometimes it changes, what I can then do is I can say, okay, I'm going to look for that. S, and then it doesn't matter if it's which one is first, A, and so on. Maybe the rest of it is always lowercase. So basically this now will look for restarted with any of the first 5 letters, lowercase or uppercase, and it's explaining that to me here. So it's looking for the restarted, right? It's finding it and it's matching. Because it does match, I could come here, go to Central, paste that, and that's my regular expression. Now, in your example, it's making you work for the word error. So if I put here and I say error, I'm going to say ER. And yes, I know I made a typo. I missed an R. It's easy to fix. Double like that. That is the actual regular expression I'm looking for. This is looking for the word error. It found it, and then I can put that here. So this is basically saying any of the letters can be uppercase or lowercase. I don't care, and it's just doing that. There's different ways to do it, so obviously don't hold that against me. But this is the way that I would personally do that. Just it's easy, and I know what I'm doing. And I do add, and boom. So then I say save. All that's left is applying it to the device, and it's quite literally that simple. There's not much more to this. It's really, really easy. So having said that, what we are going to do is you're going to play with it a little bit, and then we'll go through final Q&A, and then we'll go through a few more things, and hopefully this will make a little more sense. Jason mentioned something. I'll just mention it just in case. Normally, when you add a service that points to any probe, there is a service on the probe that is called the Windows Software Probe syslog service. This will turn itself on when you add a service to that probe the first time. That's why it says manual. If you're not sure, you can manually turn it on. There's no harm. But like I said, it will do that automatically when you add a service the first time to it. It doesn't turn itself on unless you need to. So just keep that in mind. But it will start doing that when you add a service. With that, if we do have any questions, guys, I'm available. We have about 15 minutes left. That's about the same time it did this morning. So that's actually pretty much on par. But if you do have any questions for me, please tell me right now. I'll be happy to help however I can. And if not, have a wonderful rest of the day. I will not keep you any longer. But I'll give you guys the usual going once, going twice, last call for questions. Anyone? And if not, oh, Darren says there's a question. Okay, I'll wait for you, Darren. Thank you for letting me know. That's why I do the 1, 2, 3, because there's always a last minute question. So I'll wait for you, Darren. No big deal. Someone is asking if this is recorded. This is my actual first time doing it tonight. Actually, my second, but it's our first time doing this course, so it's not recorded yet. It is being recorded right now, but it will make its way in the Institute after a little bit. Usually gets through editing and everything. It takes a week or two. So hopefully before Christmas, I'll be in the Institute. But as of right now, it is not available recorded, no. So yeah. Darren is saying that he's trying to create a customer SNMP service and using the discovery and having issues. Can you clarify a little bit what kind of issues you're having? Keep in mind that the key is that index field, really. I don't know if you're using that or not. We'll see if you can try to troubleshoot it here just with a couple of questions back and forth. If not, we may want to, actually, we do have the office hours on tomorrow, actually, Darren. We do have the office hours tomorrow. So if we can figure it out here, what I would recommend is to join Jason and I on the office hours tomorrow, and we can go a little further into it. But let's try to see if you can clarify for us what your issue is, and we'll work with that. I'll wait. That you're trying to use the index, you're trying to write to get a disk status on a QNAP NAS. Honestly, I'd love to see that because I'd love to be able to publish it. If I'm not mistaken, there might already be one in the cookbook for that. I don't know if you've looked at the cookbook at all for that specific one. That sounds familiar.
We actually did a QNAP RAID status.
It's a RAID status, you're right. All right, so Darren, if you want, what we'll do, I'll put my email in there, Marc-Andre. I'd work with you as long as you let me publish in the cookbook when we're done. Let's try to troubleshoot that together. We'll take it offline just so that we don't keep everybody just for that. But I'll let it take a quick look for you. It might be good if we can troubleshoot the office hours tomorrow. Yeah, you do have my email. I should have remembered that. So anyways, reach out to me. We'll figure out the best way to do this, and we'll figure out a solution. In the meantime, I think that's it then. So everybody have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next course. Thanks, everyone.